Hey folks, it's Tommy Z. Welcome back to the channel. And today I want to share with you some principles and lessons from probably the greatest musical mentor that lived in recent history. Unfortunately, she was no longer around when I was born. The beautiful thing about the internet and books is that you get to learn from the masters. You get to learn from people who aren't necessarily alive. You get to learn timeless principles that can help you grow, that can help you to become a remarkable craftsperson. And this is precisely the kind of transformation that I care about for myself and for everyone that we mentor. So if you don't know Nadia Boulanger, she taught everyone from Aaron Copland to Quincy Jones. But what's interesting is her methods weren't just about music theory or technique. It was about developing a certain kind of mindset and a way of being that turned good musicians into extraordinary craftspeople. So I've distilled her approach into 7 practical principles that will transform not just how you play, but how you think about yourself as a human being and your craft. Whether you're composing for clients or for yourself, or whether you're working on your music career, these ideas are going to transform your musical journey. And I'll share very specific habits that you can start today. Principle number 1, you need a foundation. And how do you build a foundation? With deliberate repetition. We are what we repeat, folks, and I will never get tired of repeating this to all the musicians that we mentor. Repetition. Here's the truth about mastery that is rarely brought up. To reach mastery, it begins with boring, repetitive daily work. That's not so exciting, is it? But folks, this is where the magic happens. There's a beautiful quote that I often share with my students, and that is, be regular in your life so you can be violent in your work. Boulanger's students spent years drilling scales, harmonies, and counterpoint, not to become robots who could just blindly mimic the past, but to internalize the musical language and certain patterns that could eventually free their creativity. You ever heard about that 10,000 hour rule? That we need to spend 10,000 hours of practicing anything in order to master it? That rule came from the research of Anders Ericsson. And that rule confirms this principle. Expertise comes from deliberate, daily, conscious, repetitive practice. Focused, structured repetition of what you can't yet do well. And here's the key distinction that when I understood it, it changed everything for me. Deliberate practice isn't doing mindless repetition like a robot. It's targeted, sometimes painful, but necessary work on your weak spots. The difference between amateurs and pros is that pros delight in the pain because they understand that it will make them better. The amateurs are not very comfortable with the pain, so they actually prefer to end the pain than to make it a necessary part of their progress. But enough with the preaching. Let me give you a very specific practice that you can start today. I want you to identify one musical skill that is currently holding you back. Then I want you to compare and listen and contrast where you are now in that particular skill to what the world considers a world-class standard. I know they always say don't compare yourself, but folks, let's get real, okay? When it comes to craft, you should absolutely compare yourself. And the most important skill that you can develop is the ability to pinpoint exactly where you fall short between where you are right now and the world-class standard. The pros are okay with feeling that sort of discomfort they experience when they sense that they are so far away from the world-class standard. They're okay with that. The amateur shrinks in doubt and despair. Oh my God, I'm never gonna get to over here. Well, guess what? You are gonna get to over here as long as you are committed to a daily, deliberate repetition of the skills that will make you a remarkable craftsperson. To show up and to deliberately practice something every day that may not feel comfortable requires discipline. And Nadia Boulanger, as a great musical mentor, taught her superstar students that without discipline, there can be no freedom. Principle number 2, embrace the unsexy work. Boulanger's students didn't write symphonies on day one. They analyzed Bach fugues and sang intervals for hours. And this echoes what James Clear tells us in his wonderful book, The Atomic Habits. It is small and consistent daily efforts that eventually compound into irreversible expertise that is so embodied within you, that is actually so you, that this is not something that you're going to easily forget. The musicians that I work with in our academy, the ones that go on to see success, embody this one trait. They have fallen in love with the boring aspect of building a foundation that the amateurs skip. The amateurs want to get to something sexy, something glamorous, something cool, something that will tickle their senses. The pros understand that they need to calmly, patiently, and persistently repeat certain tasks every single day in order to build on a solid foundation. Here's what this looks like in practice. Maybe you start each of your jam sessions with 10 minutes of fundamental drills. Maybe you literally put a block in your calendar called boring hours, where you tackle all the unglamorous tasks that have to do with your career and your craft. Maybe you track your small daily rituals in some kind of a habit tracker. Because folks, it's easy to get discouraged because these little repetitive tasks don't seem like much. And the results, the compounding actually appears sometime in the future. So until then, you keep yourself motivated by seeing all the X's on every single day, knowing that you're actually taking steps, knowing that these little X's, though they don't seem like they're creating progress now, they are absolutely a fact. You are doing them, and because you are repeating them, they will blossom and bloom into a real, tangible result. Principle number 3, cultivate a growth mindset. Boulanger rejected the myth of innate talent. And this is something that Carol Dweck, the author of one of my favorite books called Mindset, has validated in her research. Those who see their skills as something malleable, something to be shaped, outperform naturals in the long run. When the client rejects your work or when you bomb some kind of an audition, there are 2 paths. There is the fixed mindset path, which is, why am I not good enough? Or there is the growth mindset path, which asks, what can I learn here? And only one of these paths leads to mastery. And I think you know which one. Let me share something personal here. Every time I have received revision requests, my first instinct, even after all these years, is to kind of shrink in rejection. And then I like to get passive-aggressive about it, walking back and forth in my studio and thinking of all the clever things that I could say in response to these revision requests. This does not serve me. So instead, I've learned by watching the pros to take revision requests or even rejections at face value. They're not about me, but they can serve me. Because when I make it about the client and I help them to get to where they want to get to, I become a better craftsperson. So now when a client says, I don't know, this is not it, instead of becoming dejected, I choose to get curious. I approach it like a scientist fascinated with a subject. I see it as an interesting problem to solve, and I try to get inside of the head of my client. Professionals know how to manage their feelings and emotions and channel them into creative, constructive output. And guess what? That serves everyone much better than focusing on your own ego. Let me put it this way. Would you rather be happy and send a beautiful invoice, or would you rather be right? If you want to go ahead and tell yourself that you were right, then that's your choice, but you probably won't work with that client again, and they probably won't refer you to their friends. As someone who strives to be a remarkable musical craftsperson, I'd rather create beautiful music and get paid handsomely for it than be right. So in the spirit of cultivating a growth mindset, I want you to remix internal dialogues in your mind whenever they appear. Could it be that we interpret certain words differently, me and the client? Let me dig into that. Let me ask some probing questions. But do you notice how we're not following the natural script that might appear in our mind? We're not reacting impulsively. Instead, we are responding intentionally, deliberately. Perhaps choosing not to express some of the prima donna energy and instead choosing to express the remarkable, patient, and persistent musical craftsperson energy that in the long run is going to serve you and a client much better. At the same time, I want you to take on projects that you perceive to be like 20 to 30% above your current skill level. Folks, I can tell you from personal experience that there are many times I receive projects and I was like, how the heck am I going to do this? And you naturally begin to shrink and contract in your insecurity and doubts. But I've noticed that as soon as I click new session and I just start jamming, things start coming together slowly. And if you have the talent and you cultivate that deliberate practice, you will notice that with each project that feels like it's outside of your capability, you actually grow into it. And then you go higher and higher and higher. The point I'm trying to convey simply here is that the mind sometimes tries to protect you from challenges that may seem in your mind as if they're going to destroy you. But in fact, if you can approach these challenges with humility, openness, and courage, they're not only not going to destroy you, even if you fail, they're going to be absolutely invaluable as lessons that will make you a better craftsperson. Boulanger actually forced her students to work outside of their familiar territory so they could become adaptable. When you embrace challenges as growth opportunities rather than threats to your identity, that's how you accelerate your journey to mastery. Principle number 4, I want you to fuse discipline with play. Yes, Boulanger's studio was very rigorous. There was discipline, there was repetition, sometimes boring. But folks, it was also joyful. All you got to do is listen to people like Quincy Jones recount their memories and their experiences with their mentor. Nadia understood that mastery requires both structure and space for experimentation. And Quincy Jones will tell you himself that he credits this principle and this practice of working in unfamiliar territory. He credits this for his genre blending success. He understood and he learned from Nadia that in order to break the rules, you must first master them. So here's some practical ideas on how to bridge discipline and play into your craft. I want you to spend one day a week, 20% of your week, on passion projects. Just give yourself a day to create something, experiment, be playful, no rules, no pressure. Then I want you to apply that 20% rule to each individual project, even the projects that you're doing for clients. Spend the first 30 to 45 minutes just playing around, experimenting without any pressure. This is sandbox time. This is when you're a kid, just experimenting with sounds. No judgment. When you practice, I want you to gamify it. Create yourself a little challenge. How many different chord progressions can I come up with in the next 10 minutes? This is the kind of principle and practice that creates sustainability, that allows you to run this marathon for a long time to come. Folks, if you just focus on play, you're going to dissipate your energy and you're going to quit when the going gets tough. And if you just focus on discipline, well, let's just face it, we're not getting into the music for it to be just dreadfully boring and to be nothing but firm discipline that basically squeezes all the joy out of the music making. When you're struggling with some kind of burnout or lack of clarity, it's probably because you lost this equilibrium between structure and freedom. Principle number 5, I want you to master the art of listening. Boulanger's students didn't just play. They listened. They learned how to listen deeply to every note, to the harmonic progressions, even to silence. And folks, in today's noisy world, deep listening as a skill, if you can cultivate it, is going to become your unfair advantage. While everyone else is chasing after the noise and just reacting to it impulsively, you're going to learn to hone in and focus on what makes a composition unique, what we could harness from the world around us as a concept or idea in our composition. You see, it is only in the act of deep listening that you can hear. Otherwise, you're just superficially listening. And how can you become a remarkable craftsperson if you're unable to listen? That's like trying to become a sculptor or a painter when you skim over everything that you see. Take Michelangelo as an example. People asked him, how did you come up with the statue of David? And he said, I just look at this marble block and I see something within it. And then I just need to carve away everything that isn't it. You see, he mastered the art of seeing beyond the surface, seeing beyond the obvious. And we can transpose this practice into our world of sound and music. What do you hear in this particular chord that could become the signature melody, the leitmotif for this composition? This goes beyond just hearing the sound or the music. It means listening to others, including our collaborators and our clients, and hearing their unspoken needs. The art of deep listening means actually tuning into the people that you're working for or the people you're working with and learning to hear what they are saying without actually saying it. I once heard a funny quote that applies very much here when it comes to communication, and the quote goes like this: "The misconception about communication is that it actually took place." And folks, this is huge in client relationships. As commissioned composers, we really need to master the art of listening deeply. Listen to the words of our clients. Ask them for musical references and then listen deeply to those musical references and try to understand the essence of what it is that the client actually wants. And be prepared for the fact that what they say they want is different from what they actually want. I've had clients request something epic when what they actually want is something intimate and emotional. I've had other clients ask for something in the style of Hans Zimmer when what they actually want isn't Hans Zimmer. I mean, what is Hans Zimmer? What they're actually after was a very specific emotional response that they heard in one of his scores. It's not about Hans Zimmer. So learning to read between the lines, to hear what isn't being said, is perhaps one of the most valuable skills that you can develop if you want to become a commissioned musical craftsperson. Here are some practices you can try today. When you're listening to your own work, I want you to first describe objectively what you're hearing before you go off judging it. When you receive a client brief, I want you to actually set aside 5 minutes of deep reading and deep listening time. And I want you to come up with 3 questions that you're going to ask your client after listening to their references and reading their brief that may undress unspoken needs, the things that the client did not mention or account for in the brief. Folks, even before you begin composing, you can actually impress your clients with the quality of the questions that you ask, because it makes them think about their own project. It makes them think about certain directions or angles that they may not have considered. And lastly, I want you to weekly, or preferably daily, study the work of the masters. Start with the things that actually move you. Start with the composers or the artists that got you into music in the first place. And this is not to copy them or even to imitate them or to become like them, but to understand why it is that these compositions, songs, or work might have moved you in the first place. Analyze like a scientist. What are the structures? What are the objective reasons? What is the music actually doing and why it may be having an effect that it has on you? You see, it is by understanding these things deeply that you can then incorporate them in your own work, and not in an imitation kind of way, but from a place of deep understanding. Let me share my favorite way of developing this skill, specifically in our business of creating songs, scores, and sounds for some of the world's biggest brands. I want you to go to adsoftheworld.com. I want you to analyze what kind of genres and compositions are happening. What are brands using right now? What do they have in common? What patterns are you seeing? Listen and observe deeply. If you learn how to listen closely to what the advertising industry is doing, the industry that is actually responsible for getting our attention, you're going to go a long way in your quest as a composer to capture the attention of your listeners. I want you to pay attention to how music is used in commercial campaigns. Is it minimal? Is it driving? Is it subtle? How does it build? Does it even build? What emotional responses are they trying to evoke, and how are they doing it? I can promise you that this analytical deep listening is going to transform the way you come up with your own compositions. Principle number 6, build your specific knowledge. This is something that I try to emphasize in the foundations module of our academy. I want each of the musicians that we mentor to tap in to the unique combination of skills that only they can bring to the table. Otherwise, you're just another musician, another composer in a sea of musicians and composers. So what Boulanger actually encouraged her students to do, and what she looked for in her students, and she literally said this, I am looking for the person behind the musician. I am looking for the unique human behind the musician. Because once you learn the technique and certain practices of music making and composition, the way to mastery is then to add your unique self to those practices, to those rules, to those ways of doing things. If everybody did only what the rules said, if everybody just laid down music without adding their unique self to it, you can imagine that that would not create the conditions for you to stand out. So for Nadia's students, it was all about merging that classical rigor with the unique voice of each of the students. The musicians making the most sustainable living in music today, they aren't just technically proficient, they've developed a unique combination of skills that expresses not just their technical proficiency, but who they are as people. Even if it's weird, especially when it's weird, because that's what's gonna make you irreplaceable. Now, folks, in the beginning, you're gonna be tempted to say yes to every project. And I get it, we all need to pay the bills. But consider what's gonna happen over time if you fail to put your distinct foot forward. You're basically gonna become a commodity. Someone who doesn't really stand out. Someone who cannot justify their place in the marketplace, especially if you want to charge handsome fees for your craft. Over time, your portfolio is going to begin feeling like everybody else's. Your distinctiveness will be precious and rare and in demand, precisely because it stands apart from other familiar contexts. Here's some practical things that you can do in this area. I want you to literally sit down, deeply listen to yourself, deeply examine your past experiences, and make a list of unusual skills and then unusual skill combinations that you possess that you could actually intersect with what the marketplace needs. Over time, as you begin to get commissioned projects, I want you to start thinking long-term of what place you're going to occupy in this marketplace. And then I want you to start building your brand and eventually saying no to average projects that don't actually leverage your distinct DNA. And then over time, I want you to start building your portfolio or transforming your portfolio in a way that will distinctly express your unique DNA. You don't want to be another composer with a portfolio that sounds like the portfolio of every other composer. You definitely want to bring your own unique, unfair advantage to everything that you do. People aren't just looking for technical skills, they're looking for magic. They're looking for goosebumps. They're looking for something unique. And guess what? You are already unique. Now you just need to figure out how to blend your technical proficiency with the unique flavor, the unique taste that you possess. Folks, the industry has changed dramatically since I started. Before, we used to showcase polished work to a stunned audience who wondered, how did they do that? But today, it isn't about the technical skill anymore. It isn't production skills that impress. It's literally the flavor. It's literally the soul. It's literally that dimension that you can't quite put your finger on. It is that distinct way that you play those three chords or you sing that hook that isn't like anyone else and it hits people right in the feels. Some brand is going to want a part of that because it is unique, because it is special, and because they can't find it anywhere else. Give your listeners something special that they didn't see coming, but that it feels natural coming from you. That's the sweet spot where craft meets originality. And this is why Boulanger literally rejected students who did not commit to finding their unique voice. Technical skill is necessary but it is not sufficient. Your bizarre, specific perspective is what the world is actually hungry for. Principle number 7, rest as rigorously as you work. No doubt that Boulanger had her students practicing and working intensely. But guess what? They also had time to walk the streets of Paris, to visit galleries, to debate philosophy in Paris cafes. You see, mastery is not a sprint. It's not a shortcut. It's not press the enter key and boom, you're remarkable. It is a process of deep, deliberate, intense work with deep and deliberate recovery. Your creativity is a renewable resource, but only if you give it time to renew. I want you to try to take 3 days off every quarter. That means 1 day off every single month. Just to consume art, just to walk in nature, just to get away. Or to spend a day in silence. Remember that quote, make your life regular, boring, so you can become revolutionary in your work. Prioritize simple things like sleep quality. Take an afternoon nap. Folks, fatigue, maybe not in the short run, but in the long run, it will always lead to burnout. How can you be inspired when you're feeling fatigued, when you're feeling exhausted? Fatigue is gonna lead to mediocrity. Folks, your greatest compositions, your greatest work is not going to come from constant grinding, but from that beautiful harmonious contrast between focused work and genuine deep rest. Your creative genius is going to happen because you allow your subconscious mind to connect all kinds of dots that you're consuming and taking in and processing throughout your days and weeks. And it is only when you give them a chance to digest, away from the pressures of everyday life, that those dots are actually going to connect and result in a remarkable idea, remarkable insight. But this cannot happen if you're constantly producing. Folks, these 7 principles and practices that I just shared with you aren't just theory. They are the exact practices that Nadia Boulanger used with her superstar students, and these are principles that we also apply in our academy, where we teach musicians how to become remarkable, reliable musical craftspeople who are commissioned to create beautiful songs, scores, and sound for some of the world's biggest brands so that you can make a beautiful living from your home studio as a remarkable craftsperson. This week, folks, I challenge you to pick just one of these things and apply it in your everyday work. Comment below which one you're going to start with and how you plan to implement it. I want to leave you with a beautiful quote from Nadia herself. The essential conditions of everything you do must be choice, love, and passion. Folks, we choose to become remarkable craftspeople. We don't just turn into them overnight. We love the process, even the difficult parts of it, and we do everything with a passion. How else would you work? How else would you live? If you found this valuable, folks, I want you to subscribe to our channel so we can help you to build a sustainable musical career right from your home studio. And if you're curious about making a handsome living creating music for brands right from your home studio, we give you a proper introduction in our free 1-hour workshop. The link is below. Until next time, I'm Tommy Z, and I'll see you in the next one.